My name is Josiah, and our group is presenting the biological data. Here you see the first Google image result for biological data. It appears to be talking about RNA. It's pretty highly irrelevant. Let's go on to the next slide. Here we see more words, presumably talking about biological data and how it does not support naturalism as people thought. Upon quickly looking at the slides, this seems to be the correct analysis. But here's where we get serious. Scientists love to call their naturalism science, yet an objective view on scientific data itself shows that these naturalistic conclusions are just desperate reaches to prove their own presuppositions. We'll begin with starting with the probability of life itself. Here are some overviews, but we'll head straight into a practical example. Life from non-life is statistically improbable. Imagine a monkey attempting to write a comprehensible statement of 80 words by mashing the keys randomly. The odds that this would work are equivalent to near 27 to the power of 80. This is a 3 with 140 zeros behind it. And these odds are even better than the odds of transcribing DNA randomly, not even taking into regard randomly formulating the intricate structure of DNA from the most basic building block. Now, each cell in our body is made of proteins, and one protein is composed of at least 100 amino acids arranged in a set sequence. If any part of the sequence is broken, the protein, and therefore cell, simply will not work, and may actually harm the host. Now, let's suppose that all 20 types of amino acids came together and randomly tried to form a single protein. The odds of that? Yeah. Now, that looks like a pretty massive number, way too much to comprehend. What if I told you that you only needed 15 of those zeros, 15 of these zeros here, to have enough pennies to cover the entire Earth? That's assuming that the oceans are frozen over. So let's say you live in an Earth coated entirely at about 7.5 pennies. It coated in a layer of 7.5 pennies on every perceivable inch of land or water, and you picked up the exact right one. Congratulations, you have now made a single protein. Point is, this is excessively highly improbable. It is not rational to bet on what is not probable. It is less rational to bet on what is less probable. It is madness to bet on this. Moving on, lately I've been looking heavily into neural networks. A YouTuber by the name of Seth Bling has been live streaming his computer teaching itself to win at Mario Kart using this concept over a period of days. Neural networks are how Google managed to beat the Go champion. In this image you can see that there are bars on the lower end of the screen in grayscale. These represent the computer's brain as it tries to process information. How neural networks work is that they have a list of inputs, each hooked up to an assortment of nodes, which turn these into outputs. Then the nodes change and learn which outputs are most desirable for each set of inputs, making a smarter and more adaptive machine. Point is, this is also how evolution works. Evolution allows creature to adapt to different situations in different ways. Now imagine I told the computer to go ahead and add in some inputs or outputs. It would have no idea how to respond to this. It was told to interpret inputs and turn it into favorable outputs, but never to create new inputs. It wasn't designed for this, has no way of doing this, and if it were somehow to figure out a way of doing this and add one randomly, it would either be entirely useless or entirely counterproductive in all but the rarest cases, and we're talking the numbers from the last slide. This is how evolution works too. A change in no way means increased complexity. You can get smarter, but you can't get more complex without the introduction of something new, which evolution and survival of the fittest in no way promote, except an idealism and necessity for theory. Increased complexity comes only through mutation, which is an entirely random process that cannot be spurned. Now, any mutation in the body has an excessively high 99% plus. Once again, see the numbers on the last slide for what your 1 in so something odds are. It has an excessively high chance to be harmful as it goes against the body's normal functioning, and this harm could easily end in decreased complexity. Meanwhile, any beneficial, and we're not talking not useless, but actually beneficial, mutations would be barely noticeable, unless they were promoted explicitly by other miracles like their own. With the amount of these little miracles needed, any progress past the starting line would be quickly pushed back, with the exceptionally high amount of harmful mutations. Increased complexity is doomed from the start. On that topic, fitness is not complexity, it's strength. The ape with the third arm and better eyesight does not have the higher odds of killing, nor the first pick of females for reproduction. That goes to the fittest ape. the one with the bulging biceps and gains. Survival of the fittest is not about complexity, it's about surviving. It's more accurately survival of the surviving. Continuing in line with this train of low probability beliefs, let's move into geology. Whoops. Wow, there are a lot of points in this section. A big part of the problem with geology is the idea of Darwin's common ancestor. This supposes that there was one being early on, as seen in the table, from which all else was evolved, and then major animal divisions evolved later on from that ancestor and branches of that ancestor, as seen in this chart. The problem with this is that major divisions in animal life appear very early on in this tree, and then later they evolve more gradually. Is that what we're supposed to assume? We have evidence of creatures that were supposed to exist way later, that existed way earlier, and creatures that were supposed to have existed way earlier, still living to this day. When considering macroevolution, you'd believe we'd have the evidence of all the many animals evolving between the major two biological forms. For example, something that was halfway between a mammal and an amphibian, yet not a single instance of one of these has been found, which is highly improbable. The evidence against a common ancestor is heaped up, yet the natural world somehow works and intertwines so well with itself. This is reminiscent of a common plan, the alternative explanation of common ancestor. Common plan. Does that sound familiar? Finally, we have hominids to humans. First off, there's no agreed upon path of ascent from the first being hominid to the last being human, which is odd for something that is so commonly touted as fact. The only evidence we actually have of this transition is derived from single bone fragments and a lot of imagination. We don't actually have skeletons of the in-between stages from hominid to human. Humans also have a lot more intelligence than animals, being the only living things to have rational communication, as evolution has seemingly gotten nothing else there. And why is that? If evolution happened, wouldn't more things besides humans have evolved rational speech? Finally, yet most importantly, if evolution is a purely physical process and the mind is not physical, how did that happen? Case in point, there are errors along the whole chain. This slide. Case in point, there are errors along the whole chain. Non-life to life, incredibly statistically improbable. Remember the pennies in Earth. Life to complex life doesn't work. That's not how evolution operates. It's about survival, not complexity. Complex life to hominids is fair, I guess, but hominids to humans, no actual evidence, and many more errors and pieces of evidence stacked up against it. And to challenge, as a final statement towards skeptics, betting on what is less probable is less rational. How irrational would it be to back up these numbers if it is less probable to bet on something that has a 1 in 3 chance than to bet on the thing that has a 2 in 3 chance? Isn't it insanity to bet on something that has a 1 in 10 to the 115 power chance? Show me evidence before you go betting on these odds. Thank you and good day or good night. Go forth and be rational, and here are some citations.